coin show, I left to go play in the game room, went to my pinball machine, and left the whole checkbook there. You know, we used to have a big checkbook with everything in it, and I had it at the time, and I left the damn checkbook in the game room. When I came back to the coin show, I said, shit, then I realized, oh God, I have to go run back to the game room and get the checkbook that I left there. Ivy never knew it, so I didn't get busted for that. But I got busted for a lot of other things there. But that first A&A in Los Angeles just made me crazy, actually. I mean, it was so wonderful. My dad flew out. I introduced him to my new wonderful friends. I'll never forget. My dad came out to the bar when he had just flown in from New Jersey. And I wanted him to meet my best new buddy, Mike Follett, who was already passed out drunk in the bar at 3 in the afternoon. And I wanted to introduce, look at, these are my new friends, Dad. And I'll never forget Follett. I said, Michael, this is my dad. It was just like it was just like a TV. Michael lifted his head up, groaned at my father, put his head back up. That's how Mike Follett met my dad. So what happened was we came back to Dallas after the coin show, and I got a little homesick. I was only 16, and I decided, you know what, Steve, I really appreciate it, but I want to go home. And he was cool, and I was on partial commission and salary. So at the end of the summer, I got a pretty decent little size of money for a kid. I think he ended up giving me $14,000, which at the time was a lot of money. And I went back, and I tried to integrate myself in the life of high school in Oradell, New Jersey, Riverdale High School. And it just didn't work out for me very well. Actually, the epiphany I got to quit high school was, I'll never forget it, and I tell my kids this to the end of the day. And what's funny is the kid I did it to, I met up later with, I'll tell you in a minute. There was this kid, Everett Schlam, who was one of the great athletes on our football team. And we're going through the cafeteria line, and they have these giant donuts that were glazed and filled with that nasty cream. And Everett said, God, I'm so hungry, I could eat 20 of those. So I look up, I said, really? I said, I was always the same. I said, really? I said, Everett, allow me to buy them for you. I said, it would be my pleasure. And I go, here's our deal. You eat them all, they're yours for free. If you don't eat them, you have to pay me for it. He thought that was a stupendous deal. So I'll never forget, and Everett's mom was the town doctor too. So he sat there for 30 minutes and ate every one of these damn donuts just to prove it. And I'm there laughing, hysterical to myself that I'm being entertained like this for $2. And I walk out of the school like this, like everyone made fun of me. They go, you gotcha, yeah, I gotcha. So I thought, by this time I said, I don't know, these people, I don't know if I can relate to them so well anymore. So I went home and I told my mom and dad, I said, listen, I'd been leaving almost every weekend to a coin show, making $5,000, $10,000. And I was making really good money. And my dad's business was very small. For those Jewish people amongst you, in the early 70s, the fall of the kosher butcher in America was over. Because people were not eating kosher anymore, and what you could do is you could go to the supermarket and get it there, just like Walmart, for half of what my dad would charge for. So his business was terrible. And we agreed, okay, we're going to go into coin business together. And I started and I incorporated my business in 1976 in Paramus, New Jersey. And I was very fortunate because in the very beginning, a few things happened. Number one, I had this crazy person I was friends with in Boston named Chip South. And he brought me in to New York City. Because the first few times you go into New York City as a kid, you walk into Stacks, you're scared to death. Even as an adult, you're scared to death. I'm scared. I remember I would look in and it said Julian Lipton got to sit in that little square room cage inside. And I thought he was a fucking god because he got to sit in that middle room. And I'll never forget, also around that time too, they had an auction, and Steve Ivy came in, and he wanted to use a light. And they said, you can't use a light. They wouldn't allow that. Harvey said, "You can't use a light." So they wouldn't let him use the light to look at there. Use the lights. There's nothing wrong with it. So this is pretty much the way stacks rolled there. And they were the only people I knew in New York. But they always liked me because I was a nice little Jewish boy from across the river, and they were very lovely to me. But Chip took me to meet this. He said, "I know this guy in New York you do a lot of business with. It's called. He works at a company called MTV." All right, let's go. So we got stoned, went on our way into New York. Takes me to Rockefeller Center. We go downstairs, and I meet Mr. Nugget for the first time. And the first time I went in there, we just hit it off like a couple. I actually, the first time I was there, he actually sold me a fairly large coin deal. And he was really cool. Did you give me credit on the spot? He said that I probably didn't pay for it. And he was, no, it's very true. And it was, and actually around also that time too, is I would go, all of these people in this business embraced me. I went out to the Goldberg's auctions when I was 17 years old. They'd give me $100,000 in credit and let me buy whatever I wanted. But the master and the king of all the people that doted on me was Mr. Nugget as a child. And he actually is offended when I say this because like, well, what are you talking about? What you did before? But Paul, when I was a teenager, literally doted on. And you have to understand, at the time, Manfred, Trudell, and Brooks was the only place really that was importing gold coins out of Europe. And at the time, the shit that came in over there was amazing because nobody knew, nobody cared. And the way you could tell they had a special thing, anything they pulled out of bullion, there was a little code on the back that's the O/A. And I said, what did that mean, by the way? I always thought it meant own account or something. What did OA mean on the back of the coins?
The 7510 that you sold came out.
That would be an OA for Paul. He literally, that actually is true. That's one of his OA coins, was the 1875-10 that just sold for $340,000. That's the kind of stuff that would come out of bullion back then. So, I was a very, very fortunate young man. And also the timing is that we're at this age now. When I signed my lease in Paramus, New Jersey, the guy that signed the lease with me thought it'd be great publicity to make a big fuss that he was signing a lease with a 17-year-old. So what happened is I got a tremendous amount of publicity at the time. I was in all these magazines and newspapers, and I was even on To Tell the Truth, which actually is really a very funny thing because at the time I had a giant Jew throw when I was on there. And we actually stumped the panel, and I actually got the tape years later. My wife, I never even thought of getting it, but my wife got it. And actually, if I should have brought anything to guys, you're gonna love that. It's really very, very good. And have you seen it? So, by coincidence as well, John Danruther here is the only coin dealer in the world that actually slept over my house when I still lived in Oradell, New Jersey, before I ever moved out, when I was 16 years old. So the point I'm making is the camaraderie and the roots of the lunatics in this business are beyond belief. I remember the first coin I sold to David Hall, and he loves to talk about it. I sold him an 1813 large cent, and he bought it. It was like $55, and he didn't realize it till afterwards, and I didn't either at the time. But on the back, instead of saying 1 cent, there was a punch in the cent, and it said 1 cunt. Because he never looked, I never looked, but he still mentions it to this day. That was the very first coin he bought from me.
Front solid.
Who
cares about the back?
So, along comes 1979, and I'm 19, 20 years old, and all the markets really begun wonderful. So the Hunt brothers are involved in silver. Silver is $50 an ounce. Gold is growing crazy. I've got Paul Nugget in New York selling me fresh, great shit every weekend. And when I go to a coin show, more Paul, I know he doesn't like to hear this. If I came home and I overspent, and if I whatever magically, if I need to sell $100,000 worth of coins, Paul would spend $100,000. And always, not like it was bad deals or anything, but always magically do whatever I needed to do to perpetuate my business. And for that, I'm ever grateful. And that's number one of my credos in life is that my friends and the people that I loved as a child are still the nearest people to me. I remember the first time I met John Albanese. Really, I didn't really meet him. We used to poke around all the time in New Jersey, and he was always with Salzburg, and I thought they were queer. Because I'd be out with all the mental cases till 2, 3 in the morning, drunk, stoned, getting laid, and I'd still be at the damn coin show at 9 in the morning. And John and Mark would walk in at 11 o'clock together, all la-di-da, and been by themselves all night. Now I found out years later that's because they had to stay up all night talking about coins, when of course all I wanted to do was stay up all night talking about other shit. But I was always like, and my dad used to come around and go, John Albanese is a nice boy, you should do business. I said, Dad, he's queer, he's with Salzburg all the time. I said, so finally I relented because of my dad, literally my dad. And I started and John was very interesting. John always, even then, always would buy your very best coins and pay you no money. Just like what David did years later. But John did it from the very beginning. He'd always pick out your very best coins, and he was thrilled. I mean, he told me years later, he goes, God, I love buying coins from you and then anyone, because you always sold them cheap. I never minded because I always had great sources to buy more coins all the time, and I always loved doing it that way. But that's how I actually first met John, who is one of my dearest and closest friends in life forever, is because my dad made me sit down and start doing this. So going on in life from there is like I had the full benefit and wonderment of the 1979-1980 market. I made my first $1 million because you had to be an idiot not to, and life was great. I started. I was young. I was 21. I bought a great condo, bought my Ferrari, did all my other stuff. But I was still in some ways very, very grounded. I don't know why I was a lunatic running around, but for some reason my core values were still grounded even beyond that. And I always dealt, even then, and for some reason I always bought really good coins, like Mr. Ducker's 2120s. I bought both of those coins out of the stack sale. I don't know why I bought them. They just, to me, they were like, oh wow, these are really rare. No one sees them. I think the first one I bought, no one paid any attention to, and great coin geniuses were all at the auction, including Mr. Nugget. And Milas was there. Acres was probably there. I bought the first one for $18,000. The second one came up about 3 months later, and people got a little smarter. I bought the second one for $28,000. At the time, the market was so shitty, there was only one guy around who had money that would buy coins like this at that time. And this is a guy named Leroy Lenhart. The reason why Leroy had money at the time was the year before, he bet $1,000 on the 49ers to win the Super Bowl at 100 to 1. So it's very famous, one of the great famous bets, very true story. So he spent it buying coins, and he ended up with both the 2120s, of which I ended up getting them both back from him, which I sold to Crawford, both. And that was after, by the way, in 1979, I bought all of Crawford's first double eagle set, which was shit, by the way, but it was worth a fortune because nobody cared about grading so much in 79, 80. And he got much more sophisticated the second time around. He learned what quality meant, and he really got very sophisticated. Has a fabulous set of Liberty Bowls. And I think, doesn't he still have one of the 21s still? Sold them. The 27S20, unless I don't want to mistake, is it a Connecticut State Library cartridge? And it's not the one. Yours is. I had the other. I once went up in a deal in upstate New York, and I forgot how I heard about it, but there was 3 Gem 27S20s. There's like 2 or 3 original rolls of Hawaiian halves. There's like 20 high reliefs. And when I got there, it was fabulous. And then the greatest thing ever happened. I found that the guy I was bidding against was Donald Briganti. and Donald Briganti, if any of you guys know him, he's a coin dealer from New York who still has the first penny he ever made and will die with the first penny. So I knew that there was no chance Donald could ever beat me up. And by the way, going back again to Paul, even though it was Amen, when I went to go buy Crawford's deal, I bought another deal that same weekend. First I flew out. I knew I needed money, so I needed an extra $1 million, which was a lot of money then and now. So what I did was, I was a little short, so I went in and I brought all my inventory MTB. I gave them my briefcase, and they wired me a $500,000. They never opened the briefcase. They just wired me the $500,000. That's all. So first I flew to St. Louis. I bought Crawford's 20s, and then Dean Oaks. We flew to Iowa, and I met Lynn, and Dean Oaks had this fabulous estate from a preacher, and I'm going to forget the guy's name, but the weird thing about it, to show you what the world is all about, I met the guy's haberdashers, something like that. The guy's son I met in Beverly Hills 6 months ago. It was very, very cool. And, for me, with coins, so much of it, as you're younger, you take everything for granted. And as I got older, and I met my wife, and my kids, I've learned to appreciate the gift that I had, the good luck I've had, and the fortune I've had doing what I love. And to this day, I love. People talk about, say, oh, you could retire. My life is one big retirement. And it always has been that way. I wake up early in the morning no matter what. So I go to Nate and Al's at 7 in the morning for breakfast, which is the greatest place to eat breakfast in the world. I've eaten breakfast all over the damn world, but I eat this place every day. And I need it after I eat my breakfast and I do my 2 CrossFit runs, I need somewhere to go at 8 or 8:30, so I have an office to go to work to. And we'll go there and I do my thing every day and go out to lunch. And then I'm home by 3 o'clock, so maybe 4 o'clock if we're busy. And I live a life that I couldn't have chosen in any other way. And as to like all different coins and stuff, I could tell you about so many different coins and deals that I've done and that I played. If you're interested in hearing more about it from that angle, but it's really a very big blur for me. The only time I do it is kind of like when I work. The way I do it, when I remember most about all the coins, is the fact that I'm never on the damn pedigrees, which I joke to everyone about. Because I probably handled as many great rarities and important coins as virtually anyone there's ever been. But like a mystery, I'm always deleted off the pedigrees, which is fine. It's all cool. But it's been a blessing for me. And here I am at age 52, fat. This is what happens when you stop doing drugs. and all you do is a little Vicodin. And it couldn't be more of a blessing to me. I've never been around a lot of collectors because the only time I made one coin roll ad. Actually, I made 2 coin roll ads in my life. The first one I did, I was 18 years old, and I did a full page ad in coin roll, said going out for business. And the only one that called me up and bought a coin was a guy named Rick Sear, who was a collector at the time. The next ad I had was, everyone made fun of me, was for I think it was the 1980 or 79 A&A, where I had a full page ad in coin roll that said, only bring me your big deals. $1 million or more or something. I think those were the 2 times I advertised. I've always been the guy kind of like behind the scenes, and I've always liked it better that way. I've always enjoyed being the guy in the back more so than the front when it comes to doing business. I don't know what else to tell you guys unless you want to hear more about coins or questions or anything like that. Anything, Mr. Beckwith.
Yeah, so the early part of your career was spent during the big bull market in gold, which probably helped prices going up. So that probably helped you, even if bad deals, prices would go up and bail you out. How did you survive 1981 to 97? That's to me more interesting because that was a period of
I'll be happy to
massive
tell you.
bear market in your area.
I'm going to give you guys the evidence. A couple of things happened.
Evidence.
Evidence, the truth. 1980, was it 80 or 81, Paul? When the bus went over my car.
Coincidence.
It wasn't a coincidence.
Well, first off,
1980.
79 is a lot different than this coin market.
Yeah, it was, but anyway.
Bull market is
Because I had Cherokee money to start.
Because
No.
if it was going up 10% a week.
Right.
Like gold
It was
is now,
crazy.
that's what coins were doing in 79.
They were.
And they didn't even-
1980, coins left from inventory at the top were proof 3-cent nickels at 32.50 that I bought for Ed Hips. I remember those. That was some
Good value.
But a couple of things happened to me. Number one, what I and truth is, I had an accident in front of MTV in New York. A bus, I was hailing a cab and a bus almost killed me. I jumped out of the way and it ran over my briefcase with my coins inside. And I had a very creative thought from one Mr. David Gans. Have you heard of? Governor Gans, President Gans. And I had it. No, there's nothing wrong with it. The coins were a little messed up, and I got like $220,000 insurance on it. But what it did was, it wasn't so much the $220,000 I got, but what it forced me to do was just sell all my coins. So I ended up selling down my inventory very rapidly before everyone else. So that was a very big edge for me in the beginning. But the thing that I did that was different from anyone else during this period, and it's really great that you asked this question because it's actually very interesting. I'm really glad you asked this. Is I kept buying and selling coins all the time. Back then there wasn't slabs. It was a matter of, did people respect your eye? And it's like anything else. You could bullshit a little bit or deal with people that don't know anything, but I was always dealing with other dealers. So if I didn't have a good eye, my product would not sell. So I always was able to buy and sell. And it was to the point where you would go to coin shows in the early 80s and all you would see are coin dealers playing backgammon. Literally, not a joke. That's all they would see, backgammon
Nobody
tables.
would buy coins. If the coin dealer newsletter said 300, there are only one place to go. You could go to Kevin and he'd offer you 130.
And I literally kept I
And
would
nobody
always
else
make more.
would pay 130.
I once went, when I was in New Jersey, and I think it was 82, I went out to Bowers. Back then it was Bowers and Redding. And no one was there except for Ivy. Steve Ivy showed up. And back then when we'd go to coin auctions, we would play high bid. If you were higher, the other guy would lay off, I noticed I was actually very clever as a young man. And I noticed that no one was there, so I put bids down on every coin in this auction, and literally beat Ivy out on every coin except for some. I went to this auction and no one else showed up but me, and I bought the whole auction. And this was a Bowers and Ready sale. I'm glad you brought that up. I would have never remembered that. So what I did was, before the sale, when I recognized that no one else was going to show up, I went to Dave and I said, listen, I think I'm going to spend a lot of money in your auction. I said, give me 4 months to pay for it. He agreed. So we did that. I bought all of these coins, and at the time, the whole auction I think was probably around $400,000. It was a lot of coins. There was a lot of fabulous coins in there. I went over to the Goldbergs, and at the time they had this lovely man who since has passed away, named Bob Lowry, who was a successful first-generation guy who was buying coins. And I took all these coins and I sold to the Goldbergs as one lot. So I made about $80,000 or $90,000, and they paid me immediately. And I had floated for 4 months with Bowers. So the reason it was different for me was no overhead. I had a tiny little office, and I kept buying and selling. People were just like this, and they would do nothing, and I just kept buying and selling coins. And there was always people that were interested in buying value. I would sell coins in the early 80s to acres all the time for Steve's typeset. Because I knew what a lot of people back then really couldn't grade. It was all bullshit. They really couldn't grade. And if you could grade, it made a big difference.
Did you specialize, Kevin, in upper quality all the time? I assume
Oh,
you had to buy everything.
More so.
Kevin would buy anything. I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
In 1980, Leroy Linhart and I split $240,000 worth of patterns out of the air and said, real sharp. We nailed
Top of the market.
Top
The worst.
Worst example, but listen to this. In 1982, at the bottom of the market, nobody, like they said, nobody would buy anything. We were down to 7 patterns. We had 44,000 of these 7 patterns. Leroy said, sell them. I said, Leroy, who am I going to sell them to? He says, well, Kevin will make an offer. So I go over to Kevin, and I said, Kevin, here are these 7 patterns we brought out of here. Kevin said, sure, I'll make an offer. He said, okay, $6,000. We're paying 44,000. So I go, so luckily I was smart enough. Kevin and I were good friends, and I went over to Kevin and I said, Kevin, thanks for the offer. I appreciate it, but I'm not going to sell them. I went to Leroy, wrote him a check for $3,000. Well, now I was in half the coins at $22,000, half the coins at $3,000. So I was in at $25,000. You ended up getting about $18,000 over a couple of years here. But Kevin was the only person who would make an offer. Halpern was at that show, the same show. It was June of Long Beach, 1982.
That's when he was done. That's when he was selling it.
He was
I actually
done.
bought most of. Again, you reminding me. I don't remember. Thank you. At that show is when Halpern,
Yeah.
New England Rare Coin Galleries through the 70s kicked everybody's ass, and that was Jimmy Halpern. Steve's place in Dallas was a distant second as the young aggressive coin goers. What happened to Jim was, more so than the coin market turning on him, he bought this huge building in downtown Boston that today is probably a $200 million building. And he got so screwed by the people that were involved in fixing it up, it just killed him. He was way over leveraged, and he was done. So at that,
Not the his partners.
his partners,
His partners screwed
everything,
him.
his partners,
Yeah, they screwed him.
everyone that could screw you, screwed him. It just, he wasn't paying attention to it. And like any of us, when we deal with those people, we have no shot, as we all know. Even if we're redoing a bathroom, it's horrible. I mean, yesterday my son Brandon is just doing a condo. He gets a text. The electrical, he thought he was going to be $2,000. He gets a bill for $8,600. And he goes, "What do I do?" I said, "Calm down. I'll take care of it." But I mean, you have no shot against those people unless you're right on top of it. So they managed to take. And at that coin show he's talking about, I literally bought out all of Jimmy's coins.
Jim offered me a double roll box. I was collecting cow gold. He had a couple of hundred cow gold pieces. You're getting $50. I only bought 30 or 40 because I didn't have any money either.
And I probably went in and I bought the rest of them for $35.
You're right.
Well, did the wise person on to turn things?
Let me tell you about a couple of the sales. The one that's very important is the Garrett's, because that was, to this day, if you go through that catalog, I can show you the coins. I remember them because they were so devastating.
1827.
Yeah, but that coin's worth more money than coins that are worth